Morning, all. So, I didn't get a note from Moss on Airfix and Chill. Oh, by the way, I should pop this round. It's a bit leany because the stand is broken on this one. They're sending me a new stand today, but these are pop-up stands. You should see over the next 2 days if you're going to come over to Telford. So I've got these two stands and a banner on the front. I've only got a little table. I'm not really coming for anything other than advertising, basically. I don't have very much in the way of stock. I've got some secondhand kits. I'll have a few bottles of leveling thinner and spruger and stuff, but not a huge amount. I can take orders, obviously. But yeah, I thought I'd do a quick pop-up stream as I hadn't heard from Moss on Airfix and Chill. I know we did a stream last night, but not this morning. So I did drop him a quick note, but I thought if Airfix and Chill isn't going to pop up, maybe you'll do one afterwards. Not sure. Then I thought I'd quickly pop on and see what Airfix do and share. Well, I mean, obviously you can all share it at the same time as me. And I'm just trying to find it. Airfix. I'm on the Airfix website. There's nothing there at the moment. Announcement. The first hit that comes up is my stream. So that's not very useful. And I'll actually put let me share my screen as well. That's the current Airfix website. Oh, Moss is going to be streaming at 12, is he? Okay. I may not be able to make that then because I'll already be prepping. I've done some prep for Telford already. Went to the shop last night. Realised I haven't done enough as usual. But I've got to get a bunch of stuff into the car to take. As I say, I'm not taking much, but I mean, if you are displaying a big thing at Telford and you're a one-man band, I mean, likes of Jadlam and stuff have a lot of people, to do that. But if you're a one-man band doing a bigger stall, it must be pretty daunting, Oh, they have got it. It's a new tool, 1/48 Westland Lysander. There it is. What? That isn't very prominent on the website. I think I actually saw that. Oh, you don't actually. There we go. The Westland Lysander in 1/48 scale. I mean, that's very much in keeping with both what Airfix have been doing recently. British subject, it's not particularly well covered. Trying to think of the ones. I think it didn't Matchbox do one in 1/72 scale. I know they did the what's the other one? I can't think. The Barnes Wallace bomber. It'll come to me. I'm done. Sorry if you just lost a customer. I think that's harsh. A 1/48 scale Westland Lysander, I don't think is a bad choice for Airfix. I think that's pretty welcome. £40. It's about what I'd expect, to be honest. Maybe a little on the high side, but I guess there's going to be a full interior in that because it is quite a glass cockpit, much like the Anson. It's a smaller aircraft than the Anson, but not by a huge amount, I don't think. And it is very much that kind of slightly underrepresented sort of period, sort of very early war, sort of between the wars to early war kind of aircraft. So I don't think that's bad. I think that's a good. I think that's a good announcement. I think that's a good tooling. I think it's a good choice. I think that'll do well for them. I'm quite looking forward to that. It's slightly unusual. It's it allows you to do something because there aren't that many early war British subjects that allow you to use, Type 1 roundels and, the bigger, sort of bolder, like on that tail fin, the bigger, bolder RAF markings. Let's just have a look. So that's probably the least. Let's zoom these so you can actually see them a bit better. That's I would say the least interesting scheme I could think of. It's pretty low key. Looks pretty nice though. Looks like you have optional spat covers here on the wheels. Yeah, this scheme is not the one that I think I would have chosen for the Glory Boy, but that's up to them. That's their choice. I think I would have chosen this one, right? Because it's a lot more colourful. It's got the extended little racks on the wheels and the landing gear for the training bombs. It's a weird setup, isn't it? Weird setup. Looks like you've got separate pieces for the transparency here as well on the canopy to come out, and the twin machine gun on the back there with the sliding canopy at the back. That's nice. I like that. I think I would do mine open like that. Crew figures, looks like, although I don't think I would use them. But I tell you what, that would actually go really well with ICM's RAF ground crew and pilot set. And I can see that working really well together because they do 48 scale set there. Polish squadron markings as well, which is nice. Poland contributed a huge amount to the RAF in lots of branches, not just fighter command. Nicely done, this model. I know that's neither here nor there ready for the release, but does look pretty good. I think it looks nice. You've got really, typical modern Airfix recessed rivets, panel lines. Oh, looks like the rear horizontal stabilizers are movable as well, which is good. I'm liking that. Obviously, the training bomb loadout going to be optional. Oh, here we go. Yeah, you see, this is where I think Airfix fall down a little bit. Kudos that they've included the pilot figures, but they're not. It's not their strong suit. Let's put it that way, I would say. Yeah, Cheddar Boy. So I think that's. I think you're wrong. I think one of Airfix's. So there are a couple of things that Airfix do quite well, and that is sort of British stuff, and they do these occasional kind of off the wall things. That was very much in their release strategy, because if you think, and again, this is so Peter Oxley released a video. Why don't kit manufacturers release what people want? Well, trying to ascertain what people want is firstly difficult, and secondly, it's kind of stupid, right? Because people don't know what they want. And until you release something, you can never be 100% sure. And if this was a completely obscure aircraft, I could kind of get that. But the Lysander is pretty well known. It's pretty well loved in a lot of British World War II circles. It's a bit quirky looking. So you're capturing that market who like the unusual, the stuff that's not very well represented. It's not very well represented, so you have less competition in the marketplace. rather than just releasing. I mean, we can't have it both ways, right? We can't complain about companies releasing, oh God, it's another Spitfire, it's another BF 109. And then when they release unusual stuff, say, oh God, nobody's going to buy this. Which do you want, guys? You know? So customers, I think, sometimes don't know what they want. This is why I think the move to a completely online model is wrong. You have to have an online portal these days. Yes, you have to be competitive in an IRL marketplace with the internet, but the advantage that any physical store has is that as a modeler, if you know exactly what you're going to buy, you just go to the internet and buy it. If you're unsure and you walk into a physical store, you will see stuff that you hadn't thought of. Like a lot of us will be at Telford this weekend. I can guarantee a large percentage of us will end up buying something we didn't intend to. And by intend to, I mean that we had no plans or vision for when we went to Telford. So last year, I had no intention of buying anything, right? I've got a big stash, you know, got a lot of models, didn't need anything. I deliberately didn't take any cash with me because of that. I ended up buying some Edward Overtrees. I'd already seen Overtrees on the Edward website, but they had them there at the show, very reasonably priced. And I had some ideas for some videos using the Edward Overtrees. So I ended up buying them. I had to go get cash, especially because they only took cash there. I ended up buying some Gundam kits because, again, some people on the channel had suggested I do Bandai or do a Gundam kit. I had no intention of that when I went there, but because I saw those physically, I went and did it. And I think the Lysander falls into that category for the non-Lysander fans, let's call it, non-early war British period. So I think this is actually quite a clever release. So I don't agree that this is going to make them go bankrupt. I think some of their other practices are far more dangerous than releasing a new tooled 148 scale Lysander. So agree to disagree on that one. Now, and on this one, I'll go the other way. So I agree, Roy, it's a nice choice. I'll definitely get some for the shop on this. I think a 1/24 scale would be disastrous as a business choice, right? Because it isn't a 1/24 kit is significantly more expensive to tool and design than a 1/48 scale kit and produce, actually. So the Lysander isn't popular enough to warrant that. A 1/48 scale kit at £40 is enough for it to be not exactly an impulse buy, but it's on the cusp, right? If you've got money and you're thinking of buying a kit and you're not sure what, and you see this and you think, you know what, that's a weird looking thing. I've never thought of that. I can see how that might fit into my schedule, you know, go along with the kits or just be something completely different, right? Because it's sort of that bridge between biplanes and monoplanes. Like it's a braced monoplane, you know, when they weren't quite confident having just one wing, that kind of thing. So I think if they went 1/24, that would be it would be great. Don't get me wrong. I think they'll do a lovely job of it, but I think that would be a poor business choice. Let's put it that way. Whereas if you think about the 1/24 kits they've released, they've been very popular aircraft. The Spitfire, the Typhoon, the Mosquito, you know, where they can get the volume to actually justify that, because a 1/24 scale kit, which is more than double the price of this, is not an impulse buy. That is a planned purchase, right? That's the difference purely from a business point of view, right? Not from a tooling or modeling point of view, just purely from that. Let me just have a look. If you've got questions or comments, please put question or comment in big letters so that I can spot it, because I'm obviously seeing this for the first time. I'm talking off the cuff, so I'm not really paying as much attention to the chat as I perhaps normally would. And I've got to look at the, I'm managing a lot of stuff. Not an excuse, just if I don't see something, that's kind of why. Let me just go back to the Airfix website and the Lysander pics. So little bomb braces. I think those could have been a little bit more refined, but hey. But the detail on the actual kit, the actual model, looks pretty good. Not so sure I'd be using these bombs. Again, I think something like the ICM RAF supplies kit could be used in conjunction with this. They've got much better braces and stuff for that. But these are optional parts, right? I don't think this makes or break a kit. I think judging it on the basis of that is a poor choice. Again, figures, great that they've included them. They're not the best, let's face it. Canopies look good. I like the fact that they've got lots of options here. They've done a multi-part canopy. It'd be interesting to see if the sort of closed option isn't all in one as well as, or you have to join all the pieces. I'd like to see as well as, rather than you have to join all the pieces, because that can get a bit tricky. But that looks pretty nice. Nice recessed details. Separate leading edge slats here. This all looks pretty good. I would say that looks pretty nice. The cockpit there. The sight, obviously, something you could replace with aftermarket or scratch built if you want something a little bit more refined. I'm sure Edward will end up doing a brass set for this. Likewise, this cowling ring is a little bit thick, but again, limitations of injection molding, and yeah, I don't think I would mark them down for that, really. So it looks like you definitely get two options in the kit. Have a look at those bits in a minute. But looks pretty nice kit. I would say that is a good release. I think that's very much in keeping with Airfix's character, let's call it. Yeah, I think a ground crew set and a refueler, you could make a nice little diorama with this. As I say, at the risk again of sounding like an ICM fanboy, ICM do some of the best figures around at the moment, I think, in 1/48th and 35th scale. I think an ICM RAF crew with this, they do a bomber crew, which would go well with this. Okay, it was really recon aircraft, but the differences between them aren't huge. They do an armament set. Mini Art also do a lot of accessories for this sort of thing. So I think you could. There's stuff available on the market which is reasonably priced, which would go with this, which could make a really nice diorama. So I'm just going through the chat. Yeah, I think that is a very fair statement, Bugler. It's not going to be everybody's cup of tea. I mean, it's not an aircraft I would think, oh God, I wish they did that. But having seen it now, new tooled Airfix kit, I'd be more than happy to build it. And if it builds up in anything like the same way as the Seaking and the Gannet, which I'm sure it will, then it will be a pleasure to build. So, much like building a Tamiya kit, if you get a Tamiya kit, it's usually a pleasure to build. It's a pleasurable experience. And this is a hobby after all. So, yes, the subject might not be, but part of the thing that I get out of modeling, and I know it's not the same for everybody, but is learning about a subject that perhaps I don't know as much about as others, researching what aircraft or vehicle I'm going to be modeling, and quite a lot. Dale from Airfix told me actually about the ferret, and one of the things I mentioned in my review, because this is a good opportunity for me to correct myself, if you like. He sent me an article on the ferret that they actually modeled in the kit, because the Union flag doesn't have a couple of red crosses on it, but the vehicle that they actually took that from also doesn't have it. So their decals are actually correct. Now, Airfix didn't make a lot of song and dance about that, and I think they should, because it shows that they are putting that effort in, and learning little bits about that, I think are quite cool. That's one of the kicks I get of the hobby, I guess. Only training bombs I skip. Yeah. Okay. Jim, I'm a happy man today, wanting a new tool, 48 scale Lysander for a long time. Very appropriate for the premium model maker the UK is making. Yeah. So, and I think there'll be a lot of people in your position, Jim. You know, as I said, the Lysander does have quite a little, it's kind of like a cult following for the Lysander. And it's a bit quirky. So I think it fits a bit like the Bulldog, you know, but I think the Lysander is obviously much more well known. And before people criticize me for the comments that I made on the Bulldog and it not being well known, it's always, well, Douglas Bader, you know, yeah, that's all fine. And if you know that, that's fine. I've been interested in World War II and aviation history for my entire life, right? From when I could basically pick up a book and read, because my dad was interested in it. So my uncles were, so I got to read all their books when I went to their houses and stuff. And I had never really, you know, the Bulldog hadn't hit my radar, and I actually hadn't recognized that Douglas Bader lost his legs in that aircraft. So if I, as somebody who was pretty interested in that, not like my super focus, but, you know, broad, good interest and relative depth, if I wasn't aware of it, can you imagine what somebody not, and I'm British, right? Not from this country, you know, somebody, you know, in continental Europe or the US, you know, and you've got to think about that when you're making and marketing a product. The Lysander is a little bit more well known, perhaps not outside these shores, but it's also a bit quirky looking and something different. I think this has an advantage over the Bulldog in it's not a biplane, right? Biplanes are a bit more niche, I think, than a monoplane because there's extra work. You know, there's a natural barrier to activation. So I do think it's a good choice, and I'm looking forward to seeing it. I hope it's not in stock at Telford. So that is that sounds counterintuitive, but you know, last year they released the ME410. They allowed 5 retailers to have it, which screwed every other retailer in the country. Didn't give them a very good reputation, Hornby, that is, as a supplier. So yeah, I know a lot of people will be interested in it and would love to have it at Telford, but bear in mind that screws retailers. Unless they put it on general release and they haven't, it really does screw the little guy. And you know, anybody complaining about there's no model shops in your area, that is a massive contributor when companies do things like that, because it destroys our market. There's no point. Yeah. So I got 3 ME410s after Airfix released it. Mine arrived sometime in December, I think. They're still in the shop. I haven't sold a single one. And that's because the market was completely taken, basically at Telford. So just saying, it's not just the voice of a retailer you know, my shop. It's a general thing in the market, you know, and if people want physical local shops, then you have to think about how suppliers treat those outlets. And yeah, it's a big thing for me, because I want local model shops. You know, one of the reasons I set up my shop where it is, hello, shush. One of the reasons I set up my shop where it is because there isn't really anything in the area. The closest model shop to me before that was 40 minutes away, and not an easy drive, which for me is fine, but for a lot of people that's too much. And the UK is a small country. You know, we should have local retailers. You know, was it Napoleon described us as a nation of shopkeepers? You know, which is a tradition that has been declining slowly since the 60s, really. And you know, internet shopping is one thing, but it's not everything. I love the convenience, but you do pay a price for it. Anyway, enough of that. Let's talk more about Airfix, and let me have a look at your comments and questions on it. So Brian, yeah, there are so many other interesting subjects. I mean, I agree that Airfix should do more, let's call it international stuff. But they also are a British manufacturer. So doing, the home team subjects is, I think, valid. If you think about companies like Hasegawa, for instance, who haven't put out very many new tools in the past 10 or 20 years, a lot of what they do are Japanese versions of, so JSDF stuff, which is absolutely fine and completely valid, So why wouldn't Airfix do the same thing? Revell do a lot of German stuff, modern German armor, the Riesel, the recent Raketen Jagdpanzer. Everybody going to have their particular niche. I think Revell is probably better at doing more international stuff, and I'd love to see Airfix do that as well to increase that international success. But I think this, for the release at the largest model show in the world held in the UK, it feels right? That doesn't mean that I don't want international subjects. I just think this one is quite a good one, to be honest. Yeah, I think, again, Phil, that is fair. It's nice kit for Airfix, and for a lot of people, if it's not your particular thing, it's not your particular thing, right? I think this falls, for me, into the same category as the Anson, right? The Avro Anson. A little bit quirky, a little bit out there. I mean, the Anson was very heavily used in World War II. Lysander was pretty heavily used as well. But it's not up there in, stars and wings of glory. And kind of wouldn't be, I don't know. It wouldn't be my first choice. I haven't built the Anson yet. I have one to build. But the accolades around that kit and the kind of buzz around that kit was pretty high because it's a really, really good kit. So it depends why you're modeling and what you're modeling. It's your choice. So if it's not for you, I completely get that. The Lysander wouldn't have been my first choice. It wasn't. It's not on my list of aircraft that I'm really thinking of building. Until today. Where I think, yeah, actually, I could build that. Well, I have to disagree. Fancy chicken. Airfix kits in 2024 are pretty good. If you haven't built a modern Airfix kit, then I would say go and buy the Gannet, and then make that decision, because if it was a Tamiya box, you wouldn't question it as being a Tamiya kit. So, if you're talking about from a company point of view and, from some of the practices stuff, that's more understandable, but then that's just having a grudge, isn't it? So I don't believe in that. I think you judge everybody on their merits at the time. I'm a full believer in what Martin Luther King said, about judging people by the content of their character. And I think that goes for companies as well as for people, rather than, the color of their skin or what they believe in or any of that other stuff. I think you're, I'll paraphrase, I think you're talking out of your ass, Brian. I'm certainly not bought by Airfix. Airfix doesn't pay anybody, any YouTuber. I have been pretty vocal in my criticism of Hornby, and if you think that Airfix appreciate that or approve of that, then you are deluding yourself. Yeah, I mean, you take Moss, right? Moss loves Airfix. That's got nothing to do with Airfix as a company buying him. He just loves Airfix. He always has, So he views them favorably. And perhaps with rose-colored glasses because of, his association and love for them. But he's still critical of them. He's critical of them because he loves them, because he wants them to succeed. That's not being bought. So, sorry, Brian, you're barking up the wrong tree there. There is a 1/48 jungly seaking as well. Yes, let's just go back, because I saw that and was like, oh, exactly. So this is the other little thing. So little thing, you know, it's another scheme for the seaking. So it's the seaking with one of their coins. Personally, I don't care for the coins. You know, they're nice. If you like collecting coins, that's fine. But that's a separate thing from modeling, right? It's, you know, and some people love them. Some people don't see the point in them. Again, you pay your money, it takes your choice. If you bought this, if I got this now with a collector coin, I'd be quite happy to sell the coin or give it away. You know, I've given away these commemorative coins when I've received them before to channel members. So, you know, the coin is neither here nor there for me. I mean, this is nice. New schemes for me are, unless they have different parts for a different version of the kit, a new scheme to me is like, well, yeah, that's nice. If it coincides with something I particularly want to do, that's great. But if I really want a scheme, I've probably gone and bought aftermarket decals for it, or made my own decals or whatever. I've never felt bound by what a kit gives me, you know, in terms of schemes. Now, you've probably not seen that much in the builds I've done on YouTube, because for YouTube, I primarily build out of the box. And there's a very good reason for that, which I explain in one of my intro videos, is I want to show you what you're getting. You're not buying my modeling skills, such as they are, when you get a review. So watching Night Shift or Plasma and stuff is great. I watch those guys. I watch other modelers as well, and some of the stuff they do is amazing. That doesn't necessarily help you make a decision about buying a kit, because Plasmo can make, or David Kovacs can make a fantastic kit out of, I don't know, a 1959 tooling of a Dora, you know. Doesn't mean that you can. So how does that help you? They're not really step by step, and I'm not criticizing the guys at all. I'm just saying the reason I build out of the box is so that, you know, I consider myself having pretty average modeling skills. So if I can create something out of the box, and this is what it looks like, most people, you know, most people with some experience should be able to do the same thing. And I think that's one of the things I want to do with the channel. So that's why you've not seen me go off piste an awful lot. But I've never felt constricted by what a kit provides me, because there are always options. And I've got so many, you know, decals in my spares box and stuff, and say I can print decals and things. So, you know, another scheme for me is nice, unless it's a different version, you know, that I couldn't build with the base kit. It's kind of like, you know, if it aligns, great. If not, c'est la vie. Julian, RE24 124 kits in general, one issue you didn't mention is size. And yes, that is a very, very good point. One of the things about 1/48 scale, one of the reasons I think that it's so popular, is that it's a good balance between the amount of detail you can put in and the size for ongoing storage, for those of you that store your models. 1/72 is great for storage, but it's challenging for size in terms of detail, right? 1/32 and 1/24 are better for detail, but now you start to struggle with, you know, how big these things are. Where do you put them afterwards? At least it doesn't need a bucket load of nose weight. That's very true. Again, Panzer, I don't believe so. I don't think they're Revel 2.0. I think Airfix and Revell are similar in a lot of ways. They're very different in others. But I think Revell is in more trouble than Airfix in terms of not in terms of the financials or anything, just in terms of their direction and clarity of focus. If you look at what Revell have released recently and the quality of their tooling, I mean, I've got this here, which is the U190 in 1144 scale. I really like this kit. It's nowhere near the engineering quality of Airfix, without a shadow of a doubt. I would buy purely, if you're just judging a kit purely on engineering, this is inferior to Airfix. If you're classing Airfix as a 10 here, and I'm not saying they are the best, I'm just saying if you're using Airfix as the merit scale, this comes out at like a 7. So yeah, I think you are, and I'm aware. So I've worked in international business for, as I mentioned, almost 30 years. I don't really have a British bias. In fact, I don't think I've ever worked for a British company. I've worked for a British branch of a US company. That's not quite the same. Oh no, I have worked for a British company, and they were one of the worst companies I've worked for, actually. So I don't really have a bias towards British companies, and I've never really understood that. Again, I go back to the Martin Luther King thing. I judge things, people, companies by the content of their character, what they do. I get that some British people, I think you're thinking of a certain demographic, an older demographic, because they grew up with them, because they have those fond childhood memories. But I think that is the tiny minority by comparison, to be honest. That's a good point, actually. The Lysander had quite a lot of night schemes, and it would look good in night scheme. Yes, please do. Anybody that, as I say, I'll be there for the whole weekend. I'm going to go this afternoon, set up my banners, want to get the corrected stand so it doesn't lean over. We'll show you where I am. I've got 2 of those, and then there's like a thing on the table. So I'm pretty hard to miss, I think. I'll be the sort of bottom right-hand corner of Hall 2, just around the corner from Airfix in Hall 3, I think. Does it come with wafers? That's a question. I suspect not. Scale modeling twins. I'm delighted with this release. The first Lysander with posable slats and flaps, doubting internally sprung wings, and 2.303 muscles in the spats. I'll definitely be getting at least one. Yeah, I think it is a good release. I think Hellfire, because the industry seems to be trending more that way, and I think it's because of the reasons I mentioned. 1/72nd scale used to be the scale, right? Because they were aimed at kids, right? In the 60s, the people building most kits, I'm not saying there was definitely a scale modeling fraternity of older modelers, but the volume of kits was bought for and by kids, right? They were small, they could be done in a day or an afternoon or whatever, painted badly, and then flown around as toys. That is not the demographic of scale modeling today, and hasn't been for at least 30 years. So I think that is why 1/48 scale. If you look at Tamiya as well, Tamiya haven't done a huge amount of 1/72nd scale stuff over recent years. It tends to be the 1/24 scale cars, 1/48 scale aircraft. The last 1/72nd scale kit they did, I think, was the F-35, which they put a lot of detail in. It's quite a big 1/72nd scale kit. They haven't done any 1/72nd scale warbirds, for instance, since the 90s. So it's not just Airfix. It is a trend of the industry generally, I think. Oh, Mark, I feel for you. You see, Australia is a tiny market globally, right? But it's very close to the UK. So I wish Airfix had a better distribution there, because I'm sure they could dominate the Australian market like they did the UK market in the 60s. But again, going back to the wider problems Airfix face, I think, and I've mentioned this in my Fixing Airfix video and other streams and stuff, Airfix's main problem is the distribution. It's their business stuff. It's not their modeling stuff anymore, apart from QC. That's the main model related thing is the QC. But again, that's a business issue rather than a modeling specific one. So, but yeah, I do feel for you. I think you and the entirety of the modeling community, Jim. Nicholas says, I was expecting 148 scale, at least this time. The only new tool in that scale was the Bulldog. I would love that in 172nd. The only option in that scale was the Door Wings kit. Yeah. But as I say, it would be nice. I mean, some model companies are doing kits in both scales. I mentioned Tamiya with the F35 ICM with 172nd and 148 scale kits of things like the Peggy, but they've not really retro engineered some of their other 48 scale kits like the Beaufort or the Marauder. Maybe that's because there's a lot of those kits out there already. I don't know. But a 72nd scale Lysander would be a nice addition to this as well. Yeah. Can't wait for the Lysander. Many uses and schemes to choose from. A cool looking thing. Finish. Oh yeah, finish one would be good. Guy says, personally, I think both releases are brilliant. Well done, Airfix. Teddy Peter was Britain's most successful designer. Was he? Some people would argue with you on that one. I mean, he was certainly an excellent designer. More hits and misses: Lysander, Whirlwind, Welland, Lightning, Canberra, Nat. Yeah, I mean, I love the Westland Whirlwind, but it had its issues. Some would say Barnes Wallace would get in there. Some of the post-war designers, but certainly Teddy Peter was an excellent designer for sure. WNW showed you this to be untrue. I don't know what WNW is or what you think is untrue. You can specify it, but I don't think you're going to change my mind. Yeah, if it is in stock at Telford, I think Airfix run the risk of bad publicity by running out of stock. So, in my honest opinion, better not to have any. Yeah, I think it'd be great. I'm sure they will have the demo kits at the Airfix stand. I think that's the way to do it, right? And it just say it available for pre-order on the website. So I am fingers crossed that is true. We'll see. Penny, welcome. Says, lovely announcement for this kit. My scale, few elements, but I'm not so experienced at, and not an awful price. No, I think that is a fair comment. £40 for a decent size 148 scale kit is, about there. If you think the 172nd scale to me F35 is £36. Well, actually, no, it's 40. I sell it for 36 because I sell everything 10% less than an RRP because you have to compete with the internet. So basically the same price as 172nd scale to me at one F35. So yeah, Hobby Boss. So Hobby Boss and Trumpeter, they produce some nice kits, right? The problem that a lot of people have with Hobby Boss and Trumpeter kits, because they're all the same company, right, is accuracy, because they don't have access to the reference material that Airfix do. It's one of the people say, why do Airfix do so many British aircraft? They are a British company. who else is going to do them, right? That is a little bit different. But you know, there are non-British aircraft in the UK as well. But like for the Seaking, 5 aircraft were scanned and dozens more were looked at for the tooling. Hobby Boss doesn't do that, I can guarantee. So yeah, half to a third of the cost. You pay your money and you take your choice, right? Is accuracy important to you? Is detail important to you? If not, then that's fine. But we'll see. Yeah, good point. Das Werk did nothing but German armor from a German company. Avoided it. Yeah. I don't think it's a particularly valid criticism of any company to say, oh, well, they only do XXX. It's like, well, that's part of their DNA then, isn't it? That's what you expect from them. You know? Airfix isn't in a position to do everything. I think we sometimes forget that it is a business. You know? Oh, okay. I'm a commissioned model builder. I know modders Airfix. I still don't know what your point is, Panther Chicken. I mean, I'm a modeler of 30. Well, no, I'm a modeler of 50 years practically, 47, 8 maybe. I've got a retail shop and I've built commission models as well. What's your point? With regards to nationality, Airfix is not alone by any means in doing many kits from their own nationality, albeit about the highest percentage. Yeah. Also very fair. Ah, Moss, you're on. Welcome. I wish I would do 600 Airfix against last year with bundles. And now you've got to beat that record. Dear. I'm watching on delay, but I think this looks great out of the box, and I could seriously be tempted, especially if it builds well, as people say the Seaking and Gannet too. Yeah, I agree. I agree. Yeah, exactly. Kit subject choice. Ask a million people, you get 500,000 plus different answers. You can't please. You can please all the people some of the time, and some of the people all the time. In reality, it's going to be a mix. You're going to please some of the people some of the time. I think this is a good release from Airfix, a good announcement. And, you know, slipping in the Seaking with a different scheme as well, I think is quite a nice little thing. Yes, I saw that. I thought I might do a video on moving house and moving my model bench because, well, model shed, I guess. Model garage, man cave, whatever you want to call it. Because that's going to be a project. That's going to be a move and a half. So I thought I might share my pain. There is a Matchbox Lysander. Excellent. I thought there was. I think I've got one half built in the stash somewhere. So there we go. Freaky. I'm sure though you are not alone. There were some people also building Lysanders recently. Just trying to see any more comments or questions. Question: if we tempted to buy one of these, we'll be able to pre-order through you to help. Yep. Once I've got the details, which are probably in my inbox from Airfix after the announcement, I'll have to put it on the shop with all the info and everything. So it'll take me a little while. Hopefully by Telford, you know, by tonight, I can get all of that done. And thank you, Peter. Is the scale creeping up to 1/48? The recognition that modelers tend to be a bit older with questionable eyesight. I couldn't possibly comment, whoever said that, because I can't read the screen. It may be. I'm not sure though. I don't think it's just the fact that older modelers prefer to have bits that they could do. Because if you look at the 48 kits that are available, and Airfix are similar to this, the detail is still increasing. So the parts you're dealing with are often still tiny. You know, like the braces on that Lysander for the bombs aren't going to be big. Those training bombs aren't going to be big. You know, yes, if they were 1/72 scale, they'll be even smaller, but they'd probably be cast on in one piece in the rack, right? So we'll see. Frank, no, you're not the only one. But you know, Airfix are giving them away with these kits, so for that, I think it's absolutely fine. You know, as I say, you could sell them on eBay. You can give them to your friends who collect coins or whatever. They also sell them separately. So the coin, if it's, I don't really see the point of them. I know some people like them, but I think they're a little bit of a distraction. Internally within Airfix, I wouldn't allocate the resources for it. I don't think they help sell models, which I think is the point, right? But that's a personal opinion. I don't know any of the business side of it. So Wingnut Wings producing very successful biplane kits. Again, I don't know what your point is, Panzer Chicken. Wingnut Wings doesn't exist anymore. So again, it went out of business. So and also on that, biplanes are not popular. You just can't argue that they are less popular than monoplanes. The numbers don't bear you out. The stats don't back you up. So just because something is successful as a niche product doesn't mean that you can apply it generally to a population. So that's an attribution error. Okay, I've got to the end of the comments. The bespoke figures in the Lysander are a major leap forward for Airfix. I'm not so sure. Rob, I think it's great that they include figures. Let's put it like that. Looking at them, I think Airfix would benefit from not hiring a dedicated figure designer because that would be expensive, but I think maybe commissioning a dedicated figure designer for projects like this might be a good investment. Because those, let me just go back to the figures in the Lysander. And again, I don't want to shit on this release because I think it's excellent actually, but that's a pretty soft in terms of the detail on that. If you compare that with, I wonder if I can get that bigger for you guys. I can't do it through the Airfix website, but I can save the image. And then I can zoom in for you and show you that. Here we go. Let me stop sharing that and instead present this screen. Here we go. Now, if you look at the detail on this and compare that to so 1/48 scale Warhammer 32mm is generally regarded as 1/56 scale, so a smaller scale. And think about the detail on a Warhammer figure, which is a smaller scale. That is pretty soft. Now, again, I don't want to diss Airfix because they've listened to people who asked for pilot figures, and you know, this is a bespoke gunner figure. You've got the pilot figure as well. So that's great. And if you want pilot figures in your aircraft, those will do. But I don't think it's a major leap forward. I think it's a nice little tick there. But if that was crisper, you know, if that looked more like an ICM figure or a mini art figure or a Warhammer figure, that would be a major leap forward for sure. And then they could sell those as separate sets as well, right? You're not going to sell that as a separate set. That looks like a 1970s Tamiya figure. Also, not sure about those belt feeds for the machine guns. But yeah, again, you can't have everything, right? And that's a minor part of what looks like an excellent kit. So again, I don't want to diss Airfix for including something that people have been asking for. I think that would be very churlish. I think the inclusion of prefigures is a step forward. The quality, though, is not up to modern standards. Yeah, absolutely. But I mean, the point is, right? They've listened to people who have asked for it, which is really important. And there are few companies that are doing that. You know, one of the reasons I really talk about ICM a lot is because they listen, and I think that is the single most important thing any company can do to its customers, is to listen to them and then make changes based on feedback. Airfix is starting to do that as well, which is really good. You know, so that I think is the major step forward for Airfix, is that they included figures in the Gannet. They were terrible, but they included figures. So if you want to do an in-flight one where you're not really going to see the figures, you've got that, and they've included them, and you're good. If you're really interested in the figure side, you're not going to use these figures anyway. You're going to, but if they didn't include them, you would also not be using the figures because they're not there. So you're going to get dedicated figures anyway. So this is a good move. It's a good step. I don't think anybody can look at it and say, that's terrible. I could look at it and say, it would have been better if, but that isn't, you know, it isn't putting it down in that way. It's not, I wouldn't mark it down in a review, for instance, for including these figures. You know, if they'd included excellent figures, it would be marked up for sure, but they've included them, which is great. So I don't think you are right, Griffia. It's heroic scale, yeah. But I don't think it gets to 1/48th. Could be wrong. Let me just see. Yeah, 48 scale is a 37.5mm mini, 6-foot figure. And Warhammer is 32mm scale, which I think is about 1/56. So even if you took their like character models, they're kind of what you compare. Well, not the huge Mortarian and stuff, which are, you know, 150mm high or something, but they are ridiculous over the top things. I'm talking about the standard stuff. You know, even a Primaris Space Marine is probably about the same as a 1/48 scale figure. So it absolutely does work. And yes, there will be resin replacements, absolutely. And there's a whole industry that's relied on this for decades, right? This is how companies like Edward and Ares started out, is filling the bits in kits where the manufacturer's standard wasn't enough for the needs of the modern modeler. And that's always going to be the case, right? Even the best kits out there, there will be people that add to them. So again, you can't please all of the people all of the time. Yeah, they do, Jim. I mentioned it before. They make a couple of World War II RAF ground personnel and pilots, which would go really well with this set. with this set, with this model. My next outcry for a kit is a 48 scale Kingfisher. Now that's an ugly aircraft. I always wonder how some of these things get named, because I mean, Kingfisher is a beautiful bird. If you've ever seen one in real life, they are stunning. And then you look at, what's named after some of these things, and you think, how did they take that and think, what could we name it that fits? It's like, how about something beautiful and graceful, elegant and brilliantly colored? It's like, that doesn't fit at all. What are you talking about? Yes, that is the point. I'm not quite sure what your comment is there. It is precisely to zoom in to show you the detail on it, or lack thereof. I could zoom into a 148 scale ICM figure, for instance, and show you the detail on that. And in fact, you can go and check out some of the videos. I've got a video on I think it's the World War II USAF pilots, where I zoom in on those. And the detail on those is phenomenal. And you can look at them at this scale. That's the comparison, right? Okay. Well, yeah, you could do wonders with a sledgehammer. On that bombshell, and yeah, Jim, you're right. Warhammer and Rubicon kits are approximately equivalent scale. And that's one of the reasons 156 scale armor took off, is that it's a comparable scale to Warhammer. So for skirmish games, it kind of works. It doesn't really work in World War II scale, because if you think of 172nd scale, I used to play 172nd scale war games, and the actual scale for the mechanics is way lower, because otherwise the scales become incomprehensible and you'd only ever fight infantry battles, because any armor basically has limited range on the battlefield. So I actually ended up going to 1/350th, which I think then uses like a 1 in 1,000 scale. So yeah, anyway. Well, I don't think that is true, George. I think you can spot the details on a 48 scale figure and the difference between something like this, and particularly with painting, right? So if you zoom out on this, that cuff, for instance, and the shoulder part of the jacket just look like blobs. They don't look like fur, right? So you'd have to either paint the texture on to make it look realistic to the eye, even at 48 scale, or have the texture molded in and then use like a wash or something to simulate that. So I think it is noticeable by eye, and certainly it depends what you're going in for, right? As I say, I don't want to criticize Airfix for the inclusion of these, because I think it's a good thing. But for instance, if you're entering competition, you wouldn't put these figures in, because you wouldn't have a chance of winning with them, right? That's kind of the measure that you're going at. So anywho, but for you, if you want to just build your Lysander and have crew in it, and you're not going to examine it in microscopic detail, then absolutely they're fine. So again, I don't want to seem like I'm just having a go at Airfix for these figures. I'm not. I'm just saying they're okay. They'll do. A lot of people will replace them. I can almost guarantee it. Alrighty, we have passed an hour, which I think is enough for a quick pop-up stream. And also, I really need to get on. Otherwise, I'm not going to be ready for Telford at all. I don't feel like I'm going to be ready anyway. But the stand, replacement stand, hasn't popped up yet, so I can't leave until that does. But thank you all for popping on. Got 150 or so at peak period there for that announcement. So great to see you guys. Hopefully I will see many of you over the weekend. Come and say hello, agree or disagree with me as you wish. We all have our own opinions after all. I'm not saying I'm right all the time in any manners. I think if you are over there over the weekend, we may organise some get together for some drinks or something. I'm not sure when or where, but as I say, I'm around all the time, so just come and say hello. With that, have a great weekend, whether you're going to be at Telford or not, and enjoy your modelling moments. Okay, cheers, guys.